Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm here with Jim Fitzsimmons. We plan to cover a couple topics today about Swift and the industry. I would love to answer some live questions as well. And for those of you listening, love to hear you say hi and see what's on your mind. A couple topics we're going to hit today. First, we'll start with the 2022 market, what we expect, why we're expecting, how it'll play out, and maybe how that affects some of the drivers on the Swift fleet as well as the industry. Talk a little bit about the 18-year-old apprenticeship program in trucking and our views on that. Touch a little bit on COVID, and then maybe round out with the weather that we're faced with and some of the things we can do from a safety standpoint to just stay safe out there in the inclement climate. But before we jump into any of that, I want to turn it over to Jim and recognize some special drivers that we have in the Swift fleet.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we're all excited about this. So March 20th, we're bringing the next group. And keep in mind, we've had this on hold because of COVID, right? Like a lot of things have been on hold. But we've had this celebration on hold for a couple of years now. But we're bringing a group of our 36 drivers that have hit the 3 million mile mark, and one driver has crossed over into 4 million miles. So now we actually officially have 2 drivers with 4 million miles at Swift. So just a shout out for all those drivers, and we're excited to have you out and bring out your significant other. And it's always a great time. We did this last time, Adam. That was such a neat event to be able to just take a couple days, few days, whatever that was, and really kind of stop what we're doing to recognize, because you talk about an accomplishment. It's not just 3 million miles in the industry. It's 3 million miles at Swift. And so very, very impressive stat there.
Yeah, it's great to always see our people just rally behind these driving associates as well as their spouses, who really have had to sacrifice more than any to see their loved one away for an extended period of time. And it's one of the best events we have at Swift. And so I'm glad we're able to bring that back. And I know at Swift we do a lot to train new drivers, but we have one of the most experienced fleets in the industry, and to have the number of 3 million mile drivers we have is incredible. So really looking forward to that event. So maybe we'll jump into our first topic here and talk about the market in this year. Now, I get a lot of questions on what we expect to see this year, how that's going to compare to 2021, which was one of the tightest markets we've seen maybe in really since deregulation in 1980. Our expectations, we're going to see more of the same, quite honestly. There's still a tremendous backlog of ships off really all the ports, particularly on the West Coast. We're seeing more diverted to some of the East Coast ports that we serve. So I think there's still a tremendous amount of freight to be moved throughout the supply chain. There's still a significant, there's still a very low inventory to sales ratio for many of our customers. And so even as freight rolls in, there's a lot of restocking of inventory that's going to be required. And really one of the biggest factors right now that we typically don't see in our industry is the inability to source trucks and trailers. There's most in our space are not able to fulfill the full amount of trucks that they would typically order based on their replacement cycle. Swift is included in that. It's very difficult to find trailers as well. The used equipment market is almost depleted completely of inventory, and new equipment is extremely expensive, and you just can't find it. So that's put a lid on the amount of capacity that can come into this network, particularly from small carriers, who would typically be growing in this type of an environment based on where spot rates are. So that's a big factor as to why we believe the market's going to remain as tight as it has been. Another factor will be labor. I think there isn't an industry out there that isn't having challenges with staffing their business needs. Trucking's always had that. Has always had that challenge. There's now more markets competing for that labor, and so we're making we've made significant amount of investments in driver pay over the last several years, and we'll continue to evaluate and ensure that we're ahead of the market in terms of what we need to do in terms of investments. But that's going to remain a challenge industry wide, and I think keeps a lid on the amount of capacity that can enter into the market. So we think contract rates will remain strong. Spot market's going to be very active. And quite honestly, we think there's going to be a tremendous amount of freight opportunities for our drivers across our network. January and February are typically slower months from a freight standpoint seasonally, and we haven't seen that. Similar to what we saw 2021, we've seen great demand. We've been overbooked really every day, and it's going to be a great opportunity for our drivers to get out there, run miles, and make a healthy paycheck. So we look forward to supporting our drivers. And then anyone else who's looking to find a great home, we have plenty of opportunities here at Swift.
Yeah, this will be the another year, Adam, where the Chinese New Year has no negative impact. Normally, Chinese New Year hits, you have a kind of a lull with freight for a few weeks. Where this year again, we don't expect it to slow down at all.
Yeah, we usually count those days to wonder, gosh, after 2 weeks, are we going to feel the effect? Really, it's been a non-factor last year, probably a non-factor this year. May give a little bit of breathing room for our ports to catch up a little bit, but there's still so much freight out there to move. It's really going to be a non-event this year. So, Jim, you want to maybe touch on the apprenticeship program that's out there?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of questions about is Swift going to participate? There's a federal program where they're trying to kind of help fix the shortage, the driver shortage, to kind of help with the supply chain. And so there's a federal program that's going to be a pilot program to, basically let 18 to 20-year-olds drive interstate freight. And so, at this point, we're aware of it. We're going to keep our eyes on it. We are not participating in it. What I would tell you, and I've got 3 kids that fall within that group. All 3 of my kids are 18 to 20, and I would tell you personally, I would not be comfortable putting not 1 out of 3 into the truck, but we're always going to put safety first, and so that will always be our priority before we worry about seating empty trucks. And so we'll be very cautious if we do look at going into this pilot program, but again, at this point, we're not going to.
Yeah, I think there's some in our space who've been pushing this as a fix to some of the challenges of labor in our space. We're not one of those companies, and so we're probably on the sidelines to see how this works. We put safety above everything, as Jim mentioned, and so we probably wouldn't put our equipment and our people at risk by participating in this pilot. I mean, we're going to understand it. We're going to watch what others do, but again, we haven't been big proponents of 18-year-old drivers in trucks, but we'll certainly watch it. But I think we want to give a quick update on COVID. Jim, did you want to touch on kind of how we're trending and how that compares nationwide?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, things were kind of normalized as we got into the end of 21, and then we started seeing it, spike up the end of December, and then we hit our peak the middle of January. And that's obviously with the Omicron variant. The good news is we're seeing that come back down. So as quick as it was going up, it's kind of coming down just as quick. So, knock on wood, we're past the worst of that. And I know that's been a big impact where we've had, terminals very short staffed. We've had shops, either shut down or very short staffed. And then obviously with our drivers, it's impossible with some of our jobs, drivers and mechanics being the 2 that always come to mind. You can't do those jobs remote. And so, when a driver gets, COVID or a mechanic gets it, it's a very big impact. But we continue to work through those. We're continuing, to take care of our drivers that get impacted by that, mechanics, office, etc. So, we still got a group in our human resource department working through that. So if you, are unfortunate enough to get it, work through your terminal leadership to make sure it's being documented, and we'll do what we can to help kind of take care of you until you get back on your feet.
Yeah, and hey, we've had to pivot in some of our terminals as we came out of the holidays. We were back to staffing, over 50%, even closer to 75% in many of our terminals, and we had them proactively back off because we saw the spread ramping. So we've tried to do what we can to slow that. We did see a spike though, and it is coming down, as Jim mentioned. So we're encouraged by that, and we'll watch it really closely. But our goal is to do what we can to support our drivers over the road, whether that be remotely or in the terminal. But we always want to have resources there that can support our drivers when they need help as they come into one of our terminals. And so we're committed to that, and we're working through it. And We're trying to, support everyone who's been impacted by COVID, and I think we're hopefully on the back end of this. And then I wanted to touch on, there was, a lot of concern about the vaccine mandate that was hanging out there. I think, most of the viewers here know that that's been behind us. I think that's probably a moot point. The vaccine mandate's been withdrawn by OSHA, and again, appears to be behind us. We believe that was the right decision for our industry, for our company. Probably helped us avoid what could have been a catastrophic impact to our economy. And so we think we landed in the right decision there. And so it's good to have that behind us. And so it's just business as normal for our company at this point. And then weather, Jim, maybe you want to touch on this. I know we've seen some real severe weather over the country right now. And, obviously we want to be safe. We've had a lot of terminals that have been shut down when we needed to. We're trying to proactively communicate to our driving associates of when it's safe and when it isn't. But ultimately, our drivers make the decision based on the environment they're in. We have seen a few that maybe haven't taken direction in terms of shutting down, and we've seen some incidents occur because of it. So again, the goal is to be as safe as possible out there, and hopefully this storm will pass here in the next day or so, and conditions will get better. But we want you to be very mindful of the roads, and it's not worth the risk if it's not in a condition where we can safely operate our vehicles.
Yeah, and we've had issues all the way from El Paso all the way up to the Northeast. So this is a very wide storm. The good thing is, unlike the storm we had last year, if you remember, we had about 2 weeks straight where the central region was just basically frozen, and power outages, all kinds of issues. Where this one is going to be kind of a 2 to 3 day storm, and so we think by tomorrow, in almost every area, I think like El Paso, it's already cleared out. But this one won't have near the impact. But what I would tell you is, if you get through a terminal, and we try to do the best we can. So we look at road conditions locally. We look at road conditions going, north, south, west, east from each terminal, and then we make decisions where we give recommendations to shut down and wait the storm out. Or if it's safe to go, say in this case, a lot of times you were safe to go west or north. We let those drivers go and ask drivers going south or east to shut down. So you're not leaving in a terminal or an area that has good weather just to run into an ice storm. And that's kind of a big key. If you're driving a truck, you probably already know this, but there's a huge difference between a snowstorm and an ice storm. And when you hit these ice storms, it's just not worth taking the chance of trying to push through and be careful. And, you just can't drive on ice. And so when we get into some of these extreme conditions, like Adam said, you've got control of that truck. We can't see what's going on through that windshield. You've got to let us know. But at any time, you need to pull that truck over and wait a storm out. Please do that.
Well, Jim, should we jump into some questions here?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, we've got one here. It's a question about flatbed, how it pays, how we operate, work weekends. I think what would probably be best is to maybe connect with the recruiter. We've got down below here, driveswift.com, or we got a number there for recruiters. We can give you a lot more detail about our flatbed division. It's a division we're excited about. We're growing. We recently won some bigger accounts. We're going to have a need for additional drivers. So would certainly love to connect with you. So please reach out to one of our team members, and I'm sure we can answer as many questions as you have.
Yeah, definitely. There's a new dedicated program within Flatbed that goes from the Northwest to Phoenix, and it's dedicated round trip. So if you live anywhere from Phoenix up to Tacoma, it's a home run for you.
Yep. We also have a comment from one of our owner operators about some struggles he's had in the shop with his equipment. So maybe if we can get your name and driver code, we can connect with you and make sure we can get you connected to some shop leadership, and so we can ensure that we get whatever you need out of the shop. And it looks like you're trying to reset your speed, so we can make sure we get that corrected for you.
Yeah, I'll find out, Adam. I know we talked about how we were changing the parameters on the truck so they'd have better pulling power. And then early on, we ran into some issues, with having the right specs, basically, to be able to do that when the truck went into the shop. So I'll find out where we're at on that as well, because I know there's been some feedback on it. But I think we've got that worked out where as you get your service done, each truck's being tuned differently so that they have more pulling power.
And there's another question on navigation in the Zonar tab, but I know that's been a hot topic and something our teams have been working feverishly on. We're working very closely with the company at Zonar and Elios, which is the software company. I just met with them actually yesterday, and we've got a new version of the maps that have been created that we're testing in our fleet, which we believe will solve or has solved a lot of the problems that our drivers have encountered. But we're still going to test it to make sure that we've worked out any bugs before we roll it out. But we're starting to expand that test group just to get more and more feedback. But we believe there's an end in sight, and we appreciate the patience. Just like anything new, you got to work out the kinks, and I feel like we'll end in a really good place. We know it's been a point of frustration, and we apologize, but trust me, we're all working through it diligently, and believe we have the right solution that'll be in the near future. Jim, do you want to take a couple?
Yep. Let's see here. So does Swift have any plans in the near future to revisit detention pay? A driver's detention pay shouldn't be maxed out at 8 hours while waiting.
So I'd say yes, we do. We've actually had a meeting last week where we just talked about looking at the detention program as a whole. And so there's a couple different items of that, and with the number of hours being one of them that we're going to be evaluating. So we hope to come to conclusions of how we think we should structure that plan moving forward. So you should hear something soon then.
Yeah, and hopefully 8 hours of detention would be like the exception. I would think these days most customers understand the value of keeping the truck on the road as well as the cost. There's a question here. Anything in Louisiana? So we don't have anything planned in Louisiana, but we are in the process of opening a Mobile, Alabama terminal. Actually, Adam and I had a meeting this morning with Francine that runs that terminal. And so we're actually running it right now. We're doing our orientation, what we call driver qualification, out of a hotel there. And so the ground's been graded, work's in progress. So later this year, we'll have a terminal in Mobile, but that's not too far from Louisiana, depending what we're at in Louisiana you're at.
I saw a question about the number of drivers increasing and what that means for technicians and the apprenticeship program. I mean, we're always looking for great technicians. And so our goal is to expand that to make sure we're meeting the needs of our driving associates in terms of getting them in and out of the shop very timely, to not, restrict the number of miles that they can run, yet ensuring that their equipment is safe to operate. So yeah, we're going to have plenty of opportunities from a technician standpoint. So if you have interest, please reach out to our recruiting team, and we can certainly find an opportunity for you.
Here's one, Adam. I see this once in a while. Usually it's just a misunderstanding of how it works, but can you explain a little bit about power only and logistics and why it seems we're seeing a lot more of those units pulling off freight than our own drivers? I think the question was, are we giving that freight to other drivers versus Swift drivers?
Yeah. So right now, here's how power only works. Within the network, we have over 70,000 trailers. We don't even haul one load a week per trailer. And so our trailers sit quite a bit more time than we would really like them to. And so we have more loads today than we can haul with our equipment. Like I said, we're overbooked nearly every day. And so there are many opportunities where we can find a load from a customer with a trailer that is not being utilized by one of our drivers, and find third-party capacity that allows us to move that load, capture that revenue, provide that service to our customer. It's still seamless because it's drop and hook for our customer, which is very valuable to them. It's very desirable, and then we capture the revenue and some margin on that load. That has been a huge growth story for us. We're going to continue to do more of that, but in order to do that, we have to invest in trailers. And we've been buying more trailers, as many as we can get our hands on. It's very tough to purchase trailers today because of the manufacturing challenges I mentioned earlier. But typically, we don't grow trailers when we're not growing trucks. Our trucks have remained relatively flat this last year. If anything, have come down a little bit. Yet we've grown over 6,000 trailers on a year-over-year basis. So Our plan is to continue to grow that so we can do more power only, as well as make trailers easier to find and more available for our existing drivers. So don't be alarmed if you see other, third parties hauling a Swift trailer. That's by design, but we don't want that to impact our existing drivers, and which is why we're going to be investing in more trailers, essentially having a higher trailer to tractor ratio.
All right, thanks, Adam.
And really, another thing to note is it allows for a much larger freight basket, and so when the market isn't as tight, there's freight there that we've been running on logistics that could potentially run on our trucks if we don't have a load for one of our drivers. So it allows us to grow our freight basket, even though we're not growing trucks, to give us, to be able to manage through the volatility that sometimes comes with in the trucking cycles that we deal with.
Thanks. Here's one. Can you tell us what, if any, contribution will be made to the driver's 401k this year? When would that happen?
Yeah, so we would match dollar for dollar up to 3% of your salary, or $2,000, whichever number is greater, and that match is typically done in the first quarter. So it should be really in the next month or so. You should see that match in your 401k.
And that's a very good program. If you're working for Swift now and you're not a part of that program, definitely encourage you to look into that.
Yeah, you have 401k as well as the employee stock purchase program, where you can purchase a KNX stock at a 5% discount, through that program. So right as soon as you buy the stock, you're already in the money 5%.
Here's one, Adam. I think I asked you this question a couple years ago. Have you looked into box truck and van fleets in remote areas to open up your hiring pool?
Well, I think those areas are extremely competitive, and they're not well regulated like we would be. And so I think there's more opportunity in some of the areas we've been focused on, which is expanding our terminal network. We've done some things with some LTL companies, and so if anyone has interest in LTL, we do have sister companies that are part of the KNX brand that we can leverage. But some of those areas right now have not been as attractive from a return standpoint, as well as just what that competition looks like for us.
There's a question: can we use night badges at Swift terminals? My understanding is that those two systems are completely separate, which, we are keeping our terminals separate as well, but I don't think that badges are interchangeable.
Here's what I'd say: not yet. I think at some point, I think we might be able to connect those systems where if there's a specific need where a night driver or a Swift driver needs to access another's terminal for a specific reason, we would be able to grant that access. I don't think the design isn't to open up the entire network, but I think as we invest in new technology and badges, we would probably come together under really one system at one point.
Here's one. Is there any kind of terminal in Las Vegas? And so the answer is yes. That terminal actually is open now, and so currently the yard is paved. We've got a trailer in there. It's unfortunately right now being ran by a diesel generator until we get permanent power, and then half the materials there to start the construction of the building. But you'll be seeing that building go up later this year. We'll get the address. We could post that in the chat.
I see one question here about Swift having access to a load board, and I think it's specifically for owners, and they're, I think, referencing Swift Logistics. So we actually have a project in place where we're developing a load board for owners, and may have something in the future even for company drivers to be able to look at available loads. But it's going to have loads that we think fit your needs. It'll be searchable. We'll have loads that'll be on the asset side where we need coverage, but there'll also be in certain markets access to loads that are on our logistics company. So we are building something that will give you some more choice, more visibility to what's available. So that is coming.
There's a question here. Is there any way of knowing when the Phoenix terminal will be open to drivers? And my understanding is we're probably about 3 to 4 weeks out, and we have a grand opening plan for March 21st. But it'll be open before then. Actually, Adam and I just walked through there a week ago. I think it was Adam, and it's looking great. It's very, very close to being done. Kind of the final touches right now, and again with shortages of everything, it's taken a lot longer than we had originally had planned to get that completed. But trust me, when you go into that place, it's going to be worth the wait.
Well, but I want to reiterate, the terminal is open to drivers. You can come in and where we're not doing construction, it is open to drivers, right? And so there's just an area there from a driver facility standpoint that we're just finishing, and it's going to be beautiful. I mean, it's going to be like something you've never seen at any other terminal, at any other trucking company, and that's an investment we're making across the Swift network. And so if you've been to the Swift terminals that have been renovated, you'll see you'll have amenities you won't get at any other trucking company. So we're proud of that. That's our investment. That is putting our money where our mouth is in terms of the amount of respect we have for driving and associates, and we're excited about what the Phoenix office is going to look like. You got anything else, Jim, you want to touch on?
We got
just a question on when will trailer availability be installed in our app? So that's a great question. We actually have a map that's in testing right now that gives us visibility to trailers based on the telematics devices. There's still a decent amount of work that needs to go into it. A lot of vetting. We have a small group that's testing it, but the idea is that'll be available to our drivers, and when we tender you a load, we can optimize this to the trailer that is designated for you. Here's the directions to find that trailer to make that a much easier process. We know that's a pain point for really the entire industry. We're no exception, but I think with our investment in more trailers versus the number of tractors we have, as well as better technology, that's going to be an experience that improves significantly.
Here's one, Adam, I'm going to address because it's not actually true. It says, what is the reason to not taking military driving experience? And so that's actually not true. We do give you credit for experience driving in the military. So talk to one of our recruiters. If you're being told that, feel free to call me, because that definitely is not the case. And we love hiring men and women out of the military. Another one here. Go ahead,
Jim. Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's another one here. Do you know when the Houston terminal will be open? And that's one we've had some issues. We just moved last week into a temporary location while our new facility is being built. So we're probably maybe late this year, early next year before we get into our new Houston facility. But we have moved from our old facility into a temporary one that we're leasing currently.
Yeah, and hey, that's an area where we felt like Jim and I both visited the Houston terminal and felt like we're not living up to the expectation that you should have at Swift. And so purchase land, begin the process of building a new terminal. It's just taking more time than we would have liked, and I think there's a lot of constraints that have led to that. But when that thing gets done, it's going to be beautiful. I think it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility, and I think it's going to be unbelievable amenities. In the meantime, we have moved. I think so. The terminal has improved from where we were, but it's just a short-term solution, and we've got the long-term solution already in place.
Here's one, Adam. So this is obviously somebody that's not driving for us, but what year and model will new solo drivers get? And so I'll take that one. So we've got 4 brands of trucks at Swift, and our average, we trade or sell a truck every 4 years. So the average age of the truck at Swift is only 2 years old. And so we don't necessarily, target to put the new drivers into the oldest truck. A lot of times it's just kind of what is sitting at the terminal where you upgrade to become a solo driver, or if you're experienced where you're hiring in. But the great thing is, on average, you're going to be in a truck that's probably 2 years old and never older than 4 years. Now, with the weirdness of the microchip shortage right now, that 4 years might go a little bit longer, I would guess, Adam. But you're not ever going to see Swift running, some of the old equipment that you see with other carriers.
Yeah. Well, again, we might have to run some for a little bit longer because of the rollover, the time it's taking to build new equipment. But we're committed to having one of the youngest fleets in the industry, and really, we always will. Okay, well, I think we're up on 30 minutes. I appreciate all the questions, the interaction from the group. I appreciate all the great work from the men and women that serve Swift and make this such a great company. And we've had a great year in 2021, but we look forward to an even better year in 2022. And again, appreciate all the great people who make that happen.
Yep. Thanks for all the hard work, everyone.